What's up, Rockstars? I have
Bryan from Game Brigade.
we're going to be talking about our biggest disappointments of 2022. Thank you to my channel sponsor, Into the AM. As a company that believes hard work and a great product is a proper way to conduct business, I am delighted to have them as part of the channel. They have some of the coolest graphic t-shirts around and an absolute best fit and feel that has continually exceeded my expectations. With new shirts arriving all the time and other products like boxers, hats, and even a monthly shirt club, I wholeheartedly recommend them to you. Check out the link in my description of this video for an exclusive 10% off everything they sell.
First off, caveats here. King of Average has made his list. I have portions that are, I would say, are bonus or add-ons.
You're just extra.
I'm just an extra.
You're just
I'm
extra.
literally
You're
here as an extra piece of meat.
No, it's good because you brought up some great things that I failed to list in mine. And I'm not changing mine at all. Also, mine are not in order because that's too hard.
I also did not order mine.
Good.
So
good.
top 10
actually, no,
unordered.
They're not ordered, but I want to say they're ordered. My number 10 thing
Is the worst.
It just doesn't matter. I don't care.
The best of the worst.
The thinning veil.
Okay.
So did you look into this at all?
A little bit. I've seen that it was by the company did Triskelion.
Sure, yeah.
I can't remember the name of that
New company. Yep, no, that's right.
And it was unfunded. And that there was a lot of questions regarding the handling of the game, the system behind the game, decisions that they made, such as representation. So there was a lot of things people were disappointed about. But I did not look into this Kickstarter in terms of backing it, because I'm not a huge fan of that company as it is, because they're generally too heavy for my player group. So I didn't really look into it much.
Sure. So there were two problems with it that really. So first of all, I saw the art for it, and flipped out. I was like, I love this. They had like this weird like vulture mini thing.
I wish we could have a little picture pop up covering my face.
Wait till you see the edit. And it was really cool because once you have so many games, it's hard to find something unique. Right? It's like, oh, look, another orc, or whatever. So it looked very cool. It looked very dark, grimdark, kind of like Oathsworn-y, but like more fantasy. It was like The Witcher meets Oathsworn, pretty much. So it looked really cool.
I'm totally cool with that idea right now.
It sounds cool, right? It's all like awesome. And that's where the awesome kind of ended, though, unfortunately. So they were like, and they even reached out and they're like, oh, hey, you just like made us explode. Like, thank you so much. And I'm like, hey, yeah, no problem. But it turns out the reason I was the one to make them explode is because they didn't do like any pre-marketing at all. Yeah. And so they kind of launched and then just really fizzled out for two reasons.
Okay.
One is they failed to actually state why they're unique. So like they're a dungeon crawl. Okay, great.
Yeah. So that was one of the things I read was that people are like, how does this game even work? What are the things that make this game different?
Yeah. When they had a rule book and all that, it didn't stand out. Like it was like, so we even said like, hey, put bullet points, like bullet point list. What makes it unique? And they didn't really sell that.
The why back now was not prevalent.
No. It wasn't a why back now. It was like, why do you want this game to begin with? Nonetheless, now.
Yeah.
It was like why would I pick this over my half a dozen other dungeon crawls? Yeah, so that was one.
Okay.
Number two, did you see how many updates they wrote?
60, 70?
Yeah. That was only
weeks?
That was in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It was not only did they write a ton of updates, like multiple a day, but it got weird. Like
it got weird.
It did. So the author, a very creative type of guy, right? Yeah. And that came across, I think, in a negative way to a lot of people. Yeah. He would talk to himself in the update through text. Like he was like two different personalities. That would,
interesting.
He would like tell himself jokes even.
Yeah.
And use a lot of bold.
That's interesting.
Like every other word would be bold. It looked like
that actually reminds me of the Onk campaign.
Was it kind of like that?
Onk launched right in the middle of COVID, and so they're like, well, we want to do a playthrough, but we can't have people playing, so we're gonna have these cats play. It's a fake game. But we're gonna have, and they had representation of like little cats as each character, as each player. Was awful.
I bet that still worked because it was cats.
Yeah, I mean,
so
it was definitely like a weird update as I'm reading. I'm like, this is very interesting.
Yeah, it was kind of like that. It was kind of like that, and it just got to the point where it's still funded quite well. I think
it got halfway.
Yeah,
and then they
The
canceled
fact
it.
that they got 100,000 from that is impressive.
What's interesting is they haven't relaunched.
It had AI art as well.
Are they talking about relaunching it? AI art. That's
They
interesting.
did, but as last I saw, they hadn't updated since.
When did this launch?
Just this year.
Do you know what time of the year?
Later, like just recently, like in November, something like that.
Okay.
But it was even like at the time they were like, we'll fund it ourselves.
Yeah.
Like I don't even care. Like we'll fund it, and it's like, I mean, yeah, the don't use crowdfunding, I guess. And so yeah, it was
Triskelion. It is Triskelion. I said the name of the game.
Yeah,
right?
you did. Yeah, in the name of the company, you did.
I'm proud of myself. I know content. I know board games.
Yeah. Because you looked it up. See, over 100,000.
Actually, November. This is just a recent thing.
Yeah, that's what I said, November.
Yeah, there was a thing I really, late November through December, I just completely turned off all crowdfunding.
That's probably for the better. Probably for the better.
So, that was a good one.
Thank you. You want to do another one of mine because I know you know this one, and then we go on to one of yours?
Sure. Oh, know it. Barely.
You barely do?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've played the games.
Well, I have two. Okay, we'll do one of yours. Go ahead.
So I want to talk about, just in general, this is a frustration, not specifically based on a specific company, just the culture that we have seen, and that is the delayed Kickstarters still from campaigns from 2020.
Did you back Storm Thunder?
I did. Because of you.
Me too. Because of me.
Because of you.
Yep.
Because I was backing Wild Ascent, and you're like, just back Storm Thunder. Okay,
Correct.
$1,000 later.
I'm sorry. I didn't know they were going to go full poots.
God, just disappear. No one was going to idea. And that's the point, though. We have games. I backed, I think it's Elf Creek Games with Atlantis Rising.
I remember that. Is that not delivered yet?
That is not. That's the expansion pack. So that's the thing. This is an expansion for a game that's already been developed. I feel like the expansion should be very easy to produce and develop and release. What's happening? Who knows? There's other games like Chai Tea for Two. Still, is it Chai Tea for Two? I'm pretty sure it's Chai Tea.
I don't know that one, man.
Just gone.
This
Yeah,
is not mine.
There's just games that I'm like, guys, what's going on? You've had multiple years now to figure it out. Some of these companies haven't even done production, or they've just disappeared, and you're like,
Yeah, because if you produce it and you don't ship it, you got to store it. So just don't make it. I think a lot of people are just buying their time.
Yeah,
I think
there's a
what it
lot
is.
of companies who've actually done that, who sat on the production because of the shipping crisis, and they said,
Don't make it to a ready to ship,
we're
so
not
don't
gonna,
make it.
we're not ready to ship, and we're just going to sit here. But that so this is part of the problem, though, where I have with Kickstarter, where companies. Hell with Mythic Games is one of them, where they come to Kickstarter without a product developed. It's a half-baked product. Here's our idea. Usually Kickstarter means you have a product, you are selling a product, and it's pretty much ready to go to the prints. Because you have all the files, you should have everything done.
That's the idea.
That's the idea. We're not there.
No.
And that's why we have these games that are so delayed, because a lot of these companies then started developing and doing the work, and then they hire coffee runners and all this stuff, and they run out of money.
Yep.
And now they're in a real situation. So
Yeah. Well, when you come with nothing but art and an idea.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And that's been one of my biggest disappointments, where when I get games where they ship within 9 months, it's shocking to me, because I'm like, whoa, I just backed this, I feel like 2 days ago.
Tussle was like that.
So is Marvel Dice Thrones.
Yeah,
I just got the Krampus one. I'm like, so fast.
And that's what they said, by Christmas.
Yeah.
That's what they said. Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like they actually had a game and just needed the upfront costs to start production.
Which is the point.
Not start design and
Development.
development. Yeah. By the
Yeah.
way, I'll just to update you on Storm Thunder. They discovered now that walls and doors are really helpful. So now they'll have to go back through all of the rest of the stuff that they had already developed and redo it with that in mind. So don't worry. I'm sure it's coming.
Is this going to be one of those half-baked games? I sure hope not.
No, it just won't ever be delivered. Yeah. It's done when it's done in 5 years. Okay. All right. I want to talk about my number 9, because this is ordered. This is very ordered. Number 9, most disappointed in 2022, Borderlands.
Okay.
Okay, so you were talking about how it's ugly as sin, right?
Yeah.
And so you go ahead and talk about that part. I'll talk about the other part.
My way of being a backer as a player, I look at a product And if it looks just awful, I'm done. I also check out on the project. I never go back.
Smart, yeah.
They get one opportunity to sell me, and if they don't sell me, you're done.
That's how most are. Yeah.
Borderlands was that. When I looked at it, it was an ugly, brown, bland experience, and I didn't really feel like they were presenting the Borderland world, which is a very hyper-color, cel-shaded experience.
Yes.
Kind of crazy.
The desert's one part of the experience of that, right? Yeah.
But the characters and the world and the items are all very hyper-colorized, and this just didn't feel like it grasped me. Oh, there's another disappointment I just thought of. We'll keep going.
Okay, good. I'm sure you'll forget it if you're like
I'm writing
me.
it down right now.
Okay, you write it down while I talk. Okay, so the ugliness of the board was definitely one thing, for sure. They reused assets. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. In fact, you want to put I and P, maybe that'll just work for you.
Yeah.
Because that goes for your other one too, number 4.
True.
But no, seriously, they actually did the Cyberpunk one before that. Do you remember that? So they had a Cyberpunk Red. So it wasn't 2077. It was like the...
Yeah, I don't remember that
Okay,
one.
so they had a Cyberpunk Kickstarter this year as well.
Okay.
And it funded and did well.
Yep.
They took a lot of the stuff for Cyberpunk, put Borderlands' name on it, and sold it again.
Easy. That's easy money.
Yeah. So it's literally... But, I mean, so an IP, theoretically, you're making stuff for the IP.
Yeah.
And you're telling me Cyberpunk and Borderlands are so close in IP that you can use the same thing. It was like their antennas and boxes and stuff like that. All their terrain, scatter terrain. It wasn't even made for that. They're just changing the packaging on it. It's the same freaking thing.
So is that one of the reasons was like the aesthetics and the way that they failed to implement
No,
the IP?
because I feel like you can fail to implement an IP and actually try.
Okay.
I did because they're a garbage tier company that didn't even try and are just trying to make a quick buck off stupid people who can't look past the IP. I'm sorry, but it's true.
All the people who backed Borderlands.
I'm sorry, but you bought a repackaged Cyberpunk is what you did, and a quick cash grab at art assets is what you did.
funny.
It's not a game. That's just a quick money scheme.
So I have a bunch of that are missing here because we had overlap. So I'm
Yes.
going to talk about one that is another IP-based game.
Yes, you may go.
That just hit Kickstarter, did very well, potentially, depending on how you look at it. Probably not in their eyes. And that is Elden Ring, the board game.
You just want everybody back. All my viewers hate Elden Ring. Yeah.
So Elden Ring,
I backed it and hate
originally based on, it's a video game. I own the video game. Haven't played much of it. I talked about it on my channel a few times how much I've not played that game.
Did you like get up to the guy that's mounted and then he just
No, I literally I get killed by the first guy who's supposed to die. Then you wake up in a pool of water. I turn my Xbox off at that point every time because I'm not sure I'm happy with my character. Because I'm a samurai or am I a naked guy with a loincloth?
You can literally change it halfway through.
I've been
There's a
told in
respect
comments.
in the game.
So people in comments have told me don't get hung up on that.
No, you can change it completely.
So because I have like 7 or 8 save files because I literally do the same thing because I'm like I don't want to commit to this massive world and I'm not sure I love my guy.
Gotcha.
Anyways, the board game came out with a lot of hype around it. Had 34,000 people following the Kickstarter.
I think it was actually 36 by the time they launched.
Either way, that number is astronomically huge because those are people who actively click on the link to go to a preview page, which is not very common.
Yeah.
And
then
click
follow.
follow to get the updates, to be notified when it goes live.
Yeah.
To then have a game when it funds at a third of that number is very poor, which means that the company failed to deliver a product that people understood what they were doing or had a game that made sense. And I think, in my opinion, a game that's so bloated that, here's one section of a map and you might expect 4 more of these down the road or something. It's just absurd of what they did. And the reason I think this is a disappointment is that company, I can't remember the name of the company who did it, was it Steamforge? Put a lot of money into the marketing campaign of this where they sent creators to London to do specials. So that means they put a lot of money behind this marketing campaign expecting a huge return.
Well, of course they did.
And while they did do well, I don't know how much they have to pay for that IP cost. We have to understand that there's licensing rights there where they have to pay some sort of costs. So I honestly think they probably did below expectations.
It's certainly below potential.
Yeah.
That being said, I think with a game like that, it'll do fine at retail.
Yeah.
And the Kickstarter's just, it's like, come on, right? Where
Yeah.
it's like, you may have lost potential, but Kickstarter's just a nice to have.
Yeah,
right?
it's true.
On that. So that being said, because I agree. Do you want to talk about the marketing scheme or about the campaign?
The whole package to me
whole package.
seemed like it just missed the mark, and it felt like something was off.
Yeah.
And even once it launched, there was a lot of people just talking in general, like, hey, what do you think about it? Because I'm not so sure. I had a lot of people asking me about that. And I said, I'm not really that impressed. Plus, I don't know if I really need this type of game in my collection. It was way too expensive.
Sure.
I felt for what you were getting gameplay-wise.
Oh, I'm glad you mentioned expensive. Okay, all right. I got a few things to talk about here.
Go.
Marketing.
Yep.
I'm actually surprisingly lenient on this one.
Okay.
And not because they offered to send me there.
Did they offer to send you?
They did.
What the hell, man? What does a Game Brigade guy gotta do?
And I couldn't get a passport in time.
Oh, really?
Literally, yeah. It would have been like $500 to rush a passport.
I'm not gonna lie. I was jealous seeing everyone flying to Europe.
But that's not why. Because coming from the video game side of things, where they would have these launch events in Vegas and doll you up and play you right. You're right there with the developer. Have a very controlled experience, and you come out saying it's great and it's crap.
Yep.
Because it's an IP game. And I know that a lot of the IP holders, especially Japanese IP holders, are very strict on their stuff. We had the same thing with Street Fighter, if you recall. Yep. I don't know if you do or not, but it's really hard. Like, I guarantee
Angry Joe?
Yeah. I guarantee they could not send prototypes out of Elden Ring because they didn't want unauthorized copies.
It's got to be
out,
control.
Right? So then it's like, okay, so we can't send it out. So how do we show this off?
Yeah.
Right. Let's do an event.
No, I don't. I'm not harping on the way that they did it, because I do like companies taking a chance on let's push the envelope. Ivy Studios did it as well, where they brought a bunch of creators in for Mythic Mischief,
which has no IP excuse. That's BS. They should send out prototypes.
But it made it. They did send out prototypes because I got one.
Okay, well then that's fine then. Yeah. Okay.
But they did it as an event to just bring up hype. Make people excited.
Oh, sure.
Film it in their studios. So I liked the fact that they did it. I'm saying more on the fact that
they thought it would be better.
It would be better.
100%.
You pump. You have Quackalope putting 7 videos out in a row.
Yeah.
No, I'm not dissing you, Jesse. I'm just saying there were 7 videos in a row on Elden Ring on your channel, and you see that return on the Kickstarter page, and you're thinking they're like, oh, we're gonna hit 2-4 million first 48 hours. And it just
they had so many
kind of
signed
stuttered.
Up. And that's actually how Darkest Dungeon was too, if you recall. They had about as many following as if they did really well the first day, I remember.
Yeah.
Especially for the amount of people showing up, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it makes sense, right? You have an IP that sold almost 17.5 million copies within half a year. I mean, it's a hugely popular IP. Of course, you think it's going to be massive. But yeah, it didn't, right? And that's a lot of its price.
Yep. It was overpriced.
But I think I don't think that's actually the main thing.
The other problem with that one, sorry for cutting you off.
No,
Are you talking about the core game? Like they had a pledge level.
Just in general. Yeah.
The first pledge level, again, so once I assumed I'm out of this, I watched that campaign for a while. Yeah. I pieced out because I don't want to be drawn in by some stupid FOMO. But I was already out, and I wanted to get out.
No, you don't.
Trust me, I got way too much shit. Trust me. If you guys only knew, it's a lot of crap. They had an initial pledge level was like, here you can buy the game for a reasonably good price, but you're only getting a very small section of the game.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I think now imagine it's the same price, right? But instead of that, you had a lighter experience that took you through the entire thing.
Yeah.
And then they just were like, "Here's a deep dive into this," and that was it with Darkest Souls. But or not Darkest Souls.
Dark Souls.
Dark Souls. Yeah, mix the two together.
Same company. Yes,
but
in terms of
well, no, Darkest Dungeon was Mythic Games. So I was mixing Dark Souls and Dark Souls.
Okay.
Yeah, and too much darkness.
Yeah.
But no, and I understand the desire to not get the scope creep, but at the same time, I think you could have done a leaner version of Dark Souls, essentially. Right? Because Dark Souls wasn't so much that they did the whole game, it's that they also did 18 million expansions with it. So just don't do the expansions.
Yeah.
Have a super lean Kickstarter and then ride it each year with an expansion.
So I think that is
Zombicide,
kind of what they want to do, though, right? With Elden Ring.
Well, yeah, but they did it with here's just one main boss.
Yeah.
which is like
It was like a really, it
super
was a very basic, like, what is this going to
Because
give
the
me?
starting location in Elden Ring is a tutorial zone, and it's
Yeah.
very much that you're fighting mostly kind of humanoids and like these kobold-looking things.
Yeah.
You have any of the super interesting. You got bears. I mean, it's like fighting like the sewer rats in a Dungeons and Dragons thing,
Yeah.
and thinking that's all Dungeons and Dragons
That's the
offers.
best part of the game.
Yeah,
Go,
no,
Bryan.
there's way cooler stuff, way cooler stuff, but you don't get any of that. So it didn't use the IP very well.
Yeah.
Just almost as simple as that.
You had to buy a very high priced pledge to get the actual experience. Of the game.
Even then, it's still just the first two zones.
The first, that's what they have
Yeah,
more zones
yeah.
later. But man, the one that was the cheap variant was very small. I
Yes,
like one enemy
yeah.
type.
Yeah, yeah.
It was like the core basic pledge.
You didn't even get like a main boss.
Yeah,
yeah.
just-
It was
nothing.
a joke.
It was
Yeah.
a joke.
It was dumb. But the price, and I've said this before in my videos.
We should have the reference up.
I'm kind of okay with the price being expensive
At $500?
and a bad deal. I mean, yes and no. No, I don't like that, and I didn't pay the $500 either. So I mean, I'm not trying to be like, oh yeah, sure, look at me, I did that. But I felt safer backing this than I have anything else this year.
It was the entry pledge.
Because there's no way, yeah, that thing was garbage. Because there's no way that they're charging that much from a company that has delivered and has a retail price and all that. I guarantee I'm going to get Elden Ring.
Yeah.
And after getting burned on Anastyr and all these others, like, I kind of like the confidence there. Like, I wish companies charged enough to, and we're in a good business, which is on them, but charged enough to, well, no, because I watch, like, Linus Tech Tips a lot, right?
Yeah.
Or Linus Media Group, or whatever he wants to.
This is one of his literal favorite creators because he brings them up
I do,
every
I
time he
do,
comes over.
I do.
Do you know Linus Tech Tips? You talk about this guy every time you come over. Yes, I know him.
Okay. Well, but that's what he says. It's like he charges more so you get good customer service,
Yeah.
right? And so you know, there's no hiccups there. It broke on shipment. Yeah, sure. Here's a new one.
Yeah.
And you don't have to.
So
you don't have to
you're
worry
saying
about it.
you're okay paying more if you're guaranteed to get your game.
At this point,
Because you're to the point where you don't trust companies
exactly
delivering.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or asking for more later anyway. In which case, I already paid more now then, but I had to.
I was going to see if this would guide into the next list, but it doesn't,
Dude,
unfortunately.
Come on now.
We should keep going. Otherwise,
Yes.
we'll be filming for 3 hours.
Fine. My number 8, because again, this is in order of the order I wrote it in. Backer kit crowdfunding,
Yep.
or the lack thereof.
And so this one I was interested because he sent me this, and I was like, okay,
What's wrong with backer kit?
what's wrong with Backer Kit? Like, yeah, I didn't expect much from it from the get-go, as I don't expect much from Hasbro Pulse. I view it almost the same other than Hasbro Pulse is Hasbro only, right?
Yeah.
So what is your reasoning on Backer Kit? Why is this one of your bigger disappointments above Borderlands and above Thinning Veil?
Because it's in order. Gosh dang it. Because that's the order I thought of it. No, because I had more hope, I guess.
Okay.
Because when GameFound first launched, I was excited for a competitor to Kickstarter,
Yep.
but I didn't like the fact that it was run by a board game company,
Okay.
right? Because I actually
You're talking GameFound. Sorry, I don't know why my brain
That's okay.
farted out. Speaking about GameFound, you didn't like that GameFound was owned by Awakened Realms.
Correct.
As a competitor.
Correct. Well, it's not even so much a competitor, but it definitely gives them a pretty good advantage, right?
Yeah.
We're in that with like Xbox Live and PSN, right? And we
Yeah.
kind of see there's a little bit of better competition there, but they're also both owned, whereas now one isn't, one is. There's benefits to it, right? Because they're game centric, which is nice. But I had developers talking to me saying like, yeah, we don't want to give them their, all of our data on what sells well. They'll know what our best add-ons are.
That makes sense.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh man, to see dice packs, they have the best business data of any of them.
And to be honest, what is the most valuable this is kind of separate from board gaming, but the most valuable aspect is data.
Oh, 100%.
A customer's data
yeah.
is the most valuable thing to get.
Which is why I sign it away all the time. But so there's some inherent issues there,
Yeah.
right? Plus, then like Google gets sued like every other month from the EU for like putting their own things in there.
Yeah.
Microsoft did it with Internet Explorer, right?
Yep.
Like there's a long history of companies favoring their own things.
Yep.
Right. So ideally, but I was fine with it. I still like it. I'm glad it's a competitor. I wish it was owned by someone else. So the backer kit's like, hey, we're not a game company.
Yep.
let's do this. So I was like, yes.
We're another backer.
Sure. Yeah.
A pledge manager company.
Correct.
We will offer a
crowdfunding.
crowdfunding
So
source.
you have both getting the funds and then distributing all that. Yeah.
So I've looked at a few of the campaigns that were offered on BackerKit. I didn't really care for the layout.
Did your eyes bleed? Yeah.
I didn't care for the layout.
It's hideous.
And the problem is the games were not very
the games
exciting
are hideous too.
for me either. I'm like, wow, this is not interesting at all.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know. This is your disappointment.
Yeah.
So
well, I mean,
you're just upset it didn't do well.
I'm upset that it didn't do the potential.
He made a very good analogy where he said he assumed before we started filming. He said,
perfect.
He looked at it like Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile as another one ahead of this of the space.
Yes. In general,
but
it's always considered good to have three strong choices for consumers.
It's and this might be regional locked for us. So sorry, all of our Europeans or people who don't live in there. But it's kind of like the Cricket wireless. Which is
it's like a payphone service.
Boost Mobile, burner phone company. Yeah. That's kind of how it came out. So that's pretty funny.
Yeah. That I'm disappointed that it's just a non-starter. Now they do have the Gloomhaven minis coming up.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
I won't buy those. I sold my Gloomhaven. I sold my Gloomhaven for $70. Pretty happy about it. Surprised to see it's like 120 at retail again. I'm like, that game is all over the place.
Yeah. Buy used.
Yeah, buy used if you can.
Yeah.
You can find it anywhere. Anyways, my next one is actually going to be a specific board game. Mostly because this was one of my most anticipated games for 2020.
Yeah.
Delivered in 21. I'm pretty sure delivered this year in 21 or 22. Played it, did not play my copy, played a friend's copy. And I said, man, I really don't know if I want to even open my copy. And that is Nemesis Lockdown.
I remember you talking about this.
Nemesis, Nemesis, I have it here. Got it first.
On display.
It's on my display, which is funny because Nemesis is also on the borderline. And one of my friends in the player group is like, please, let's play it again. I want you to love it.
How do you pick what's behind you?
Usually they're the games that are my favorite games. Except for one that's way down here that no one knows
You have
about.
Etherfields behind you. Do you care to rephrase?
My wife wants to play that game, and she's like, I love the look of this game. So I'm like, all right.
My wife had me back the game,
and she goes, it's going back here. All right. So there are some caveats. Okay guys.
Okay.
But that's generally the idea. It's supposed to be. But then, again, Ankh, one of my favorite games. But now it's kind of like, you played it.
Do you think it's like the honeymoon phase is over?
No, so I'll explain it right now. Because it's the reason with Lockdown. These games have a time investment when you play them. Sometimes Nemesis can go 2 hours, 3 hours. I had an experience go for 5 hours one time with a 5-player game. Miserable. But what occurred, though, in those games were bad experiences where I was not having fun. And when I have a game where there is a potential possibility that I could have an unenjoyable experience, that makes it really hard for me, one, to even keep it, but two, to willing to play that again for a potential 3-4 hour time.
That's exactly why I say first impressions are so important in board games.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, how often, and you game a little bit more than me.
He doesn't play games.
Not true. I play some. No, but... Wait, are we talking ones that review or don't review?
Just saying.
Because every game I play is for a review.
That's only for work.
If I'm not making a review, I am playing. No, I don't have the time for that. No, but even still, how often do you play?
We play 2 to 3 times a week on
2 to 3, which is a lot more than probably most people viewing. Yeah. Not everybody, but most.
Yeah.
But even still, can you afford to have everybody come to your house, play a game, and have it be a bad time?
To be a bad experience? No, it's not fun. And it really kills the mood. And the fact of where people are like, hey, does anyone want to play this game again that I know we had a really bad time with the last 2 times?
I hear it gets really great in season 2.
Yeah. And so we've even had to make excuses like with Nemesis, well, the co-op campaign's better. But then we're removing an aspect of what makes Nemesis kind of interesting is that hidden traitor element where your friends could be actively working against you. So when you remove that portion from Nemesis, now it's a pure co-op experience. And while I do think Nemesis in general is way too hard because the game is poorly tuned, the game is just not well balanced in general. just adding more.
He said it, not
yeah.
me. That's to all my patrons.
It's not a very good game. Like, I love the game, but it's not a good. So, but,
I
but
love
back,
the game, but it's not a very good game.
Back to your initial thing, though.
Yeah.
My first experience playing it,
Yeah.
for your first impression, I loved it. I was like, "This is why I bought the game."
Which is why I hit the table again. If
So
it had been your
good.
bad
Yeah.
5-hour experience,
Oh, yeah.
would you have played it again?
No, it'd be
If
hard.
that was your first experience,
It'd be hard.
Yeah.
And then Nemesis Lockdown specifically comes down, and it's the same experience as Nemesis. It's a little cleaner, but it has some of the problems that I still have with Nemesis, where some of the gameplay is like, this is like redundant, and it's just redundant to be hard. Like the bag building, where you're pulling out chips to spawn more monsters. I'm like, dude, this does not need to be needed. This is so difficult as it is. Why are we just confounding this with more difficult, with my friend trying to kill me at the same time? It just makes it so you're like a draw, like it's a drag trying to get through it. And then having, but then people saying, oh, we'll just play this alternative cooperative mode. Well, then you're really kind of neutering the game in a sense.
Sure.
So that game went from my top anticipated game to now it's a game that I am ready to probably cull from my list.
Part with, yeah.
Yeah. And like I said, Lockdown's still fully sealed, because after that play with my friend's copy, I said, whoa. Whoa. I don't know if I want it. And then Nemesis will most likely be moving on at some point when I get the balls to do it.
What do you think you're going to replace with it? What's going
to go up there?
Yeah. Yeah, what would you put up there right now?
Right now? Well, the problem is I've got... Here's the behind-the-scenes stuff. I've got all of the expansions.
All right, well, we got to move on. That's way too...
I've got all the expansions and stuff.
I'll be behind there.
Right? So it makes this copy makes a good fitting hole. So if I wanted, I would like to be able to use the space. So that's hard. Maybe if like Oathsworn fit, but it probably doesn't. It's too big.
Stick out.
Yeah,
You'd
who
be
knows?
bumping elbows with it.
Yeah, who knows?
I'll be interested to see. I'll make a comment about it.
There you go.
Yeah,
Lockdown.
in 3 months when I come over again. Come on, shipping. This is really talking about the sticker price versus real cost. I kind of mentioned this before, right? Where I just said it. You don't have to.
Yeah. I'm just verifying because this is a different, because there's a lot of aspects to this.
There are. Yeah.
We have the come on Simon shipping crisis, where shipping was super high.
Sure.
But then you also have based off of just the cost of the product versus shipping. Right? So
yeah. Well, and that's just it, because you notice that their shipping is actually fairly static lately. Like ever since Marvel Zombies, it's been very static.
Yep.
I feel.
They had Dune was $50.
It's like half or more of the pledge.
Cthulhu was $50. Yeah. They're like, hey, we're writing this. This is the price. And
Sure. It
I
reminds
have
me.
some opinions about that.
Cool. So it reminds me of like early eBay days.
Yeah.
Where you would find something that's like, shoot, that $60 game is $7.99, and then you look and it's $40 shipping.
Yeah.
Right? Where they're getting you they're getting you in the door with this lower price that they're showing.
Yeah.
I remember this discussion between two different developers about freight.
Yeah.
Because one developer was talking to me about how, like, when you buy anything else except something on Kickstarter, freight is included in the cost of the item.
Yeah.
It's in MSRP.
We're packaging it
But
within there.
suddenly on Kickstarter, people think this is somehow okay to pull that out and hide that cost now into shipping.
Yeah.
So the price you see when you click buy is less, and then on the tail end, you're paying more.
So you're saying that you think the Kickstarter prices for Cthulhu Death May Die or whatever should be higher. Their pricing is...
I'm not necessarily saying that, because I have a feeling it's shipping. So in their comics version that's out right now, right? And I kind of showed this on my channel. You put one of the items in, it costs about $36, $37 to ship.
Which is absurd. For a book?
Several books and some minis. I mean, the mini box is probably...
the problem.
Yeah, it is. Well, that and they don't package things like... I always think they should package things like Hot Wheels. Right? Yeah. Where you have, the player board's this big. Well, then put it in a flat part and make the little bubble be instead of the car, it's the minis. Like, you don't have to put it in this big of a box because, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. They do this all the time. Anyway, but if you triple the amount, right? It's still $37.
Yeah.
So they're front loading, I think, all of the shipping.
Yeah.
So because what it does is it makes you want to justify the shipping. Several of my patrons did this with Cthulhu Death May Die, where they got the core game and they're like, oh my gosh, shipping is over half of the cost.
Yep.
But if I add another copy for another $100, it only goes up like $12.
I did the same.
Yeah.
So
Well, it makes sense for the consumer.
this was going to be a video at some point, but I backed Through the Death May Die,
Same.
and I added another pledge, the basic pledge, because it didn't add it doesn't add a lot.
Well, I mean, it adds $100.
You're able to sell. Well, but I'm able to sell.
Correct.
You're banking.
Correct.
So the video idea was like, I want to see if I can sell this to recoup my cost. Plus,
it's like PlayStation 5s, right?
Yeah.
You buy 3, sell 2.
I've never been a person who buys to sell. I always buy to play, and if it doesn't work, I'll sell. Right. But that for my first time, Cthulhu Death May Die was the first time I wanted, because I've talked about it a lot. Where it's backing,
it makes sense.
Whatever.
From a consumer standpoint, it makes total sense, right, to do that.
Yeah.
But Kaman loves it because they just doubled their sales.
They just got more money out of you.
They literally
and the
doubled
cost
your,
of them making the game
there.
is like $8.
So
they're
more
like,
than $8, but it's less than the 100 too. I can promise you that.
Well, I don't know what their costs are, but they're cheap. They're very cheap.
But whether it's that or whether it's I'll pay $12 more for shipping and I'll go all in.
Yeah.
Right. And suddenly you're at 420 or something.
So I will say this: that this has also happened within our industry, which is changing a lot. Has been subsidized shipping occurring quite a bit.
And I'm not inherently against that.
So I think, and a lot of companies also take losses at times. They will subsidize some of their profits margin to make shipping more palatable.
We could talk about that, but then we're not talking about Come On anymore.
But I think Come On, is like, we are getting our profits regardless, especially when they're IP based, because they have to pay a licensing fee. So they probably have hard lines. Plus, they're also a publicly traded company. So they're more likely
Are they still? Or did they get kicked off of that for their funny auditing?
The funny auditing was only because they are a crowdfunding thing where they get a bunch of money front loaded.
Sure.
Then they're
it was a top rated Chinese accounting firm, but I'm sure they can't figure out. Yeah, I'm sure it was them.
So
not
I'm just
Come On.
saying, like, I think Simon, Come On. I hate doing that. I don't know, because I don't know how to pronounce it anymore.
I don't know. I thought they were changing it to Come On, but then they say Simon now. I think so. Whatever.
I think Simon just doesn't want to be taking any losses on the product. They're like, our product is good enough. People are going to buy it regardless, and we want our profits that we earn.
And see, and notice my stance is different. I'm more forgiving for pretty much the same thing. This overcharging with SFG with Elden Ring. But then when you take all of that away and hide it into this after thing, right? This shipping cost that you surprise everybody with, or that's ridiculously expensive, right? Or that's front loaded so that you get screwed if you don't pay them a whole bunch of money. Like, I'm way less okay with that because it's hiding. Like, just make it expensive, like Elden Ring did. I mean, it sucks because Elden Ring gets punished for it, right? But they're doing the same thing. They're charging you just as much.
Yeah.
It's just Kaban separates the charge.
On your list, we going to discuss the shipping prices at all in here? Just I want to make sure before.
My cup. Ooh, no, I'm not gonna say why, but no.
Yeah.
No, not
well,
really. This.
So
is
I just want to talk.
This is it.
So are we going to talk at all then about the raised prices in general for shipping, and the fact that
was something you had, right? Ish.
I cut it.
Oh well, bring it back.
So, okay, on my list, next we're going to talk about is just the overall disappointment, which has made Kickstarter an unenjoyable environment for a lot of people, has been the raised shipping costs across the board for all platforms, which is acceptable in some ways because shipping did go up and there is a massive crisis going on with shortage of workers and people running the routes. But we have also seen a decrease in some of those costs where they were at a peak of $25,000, $30,000 for a shipping container, and they've come back down to 15, sometimes even 12. But still seeing the shipping prices very high on the Kickstarter end, which means I get comments on my Discord all the time where people are like, I'm not seeing the value in any of these games anymore because you're paying 30%, 40%.
Yeah. My patrons always say 2019, the end of 2019 was the last great year of
and I actually talk about it a lot of times where I'll get a game in and I'll say, this was a game that probably was one of the last true values. Perseverance was one. Oathsworn First Edition was one.
Yep, I just got Alien Trespass Odyssey.
Alien Trespass was a massive game. Yeah, mine's up there. Another game that is one of the last true great deals. Because now the production costs have gone up, so the games are more expensive.
Yeah.
We can see that even with CMON games, where their games have been normally historically $100, but then they're $110, $120. You know, they have raised the prices there on top of the shipping as well. You know, so that was one of my biggest things. Is one of the things that brought me into this hobby has been Kickstarter games, because I loved the hype and the FOMO. It's unfortunate because you can see it on my wall.
No, it's fun. It's whatever.
But it's what really drove me to even want to become content creator. I talk about that in my first few videos.
Yeah.
Is I would look up Kickstarter games, would have zero coverage, and I wanted to have someone talk about them. So I was like, I guess I'll talk about them.
Yeah.
That's kind of what birthed my channel. So to see that now becoming less exciting or enticing really kind of stinks.
Yeah. Yeah. It kills. It's the best FOMO killer I've found.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, it's been nicer because I don't have to spend as much money. Yeah.
Well, or you're spending as much money, you're just getting less. I don't know what it is. It really depends. Yeah. I mean, it's gotten expensive. My comment on the whole shipping thing was because people would be like, "Well, it's this now," or "It's," and I'll be like, "Yeah, it's always something," right? First it was freight, and now it's like, okay, now it's not freight, now it's manufacturing costs. Okay, now it's not manufacturing costs. Now it's second mile or last mile shipping. Okay, now it's not that. Now it's the war in Ukraine. After the war in Ukraine, they'll make something else. There's always something, and I'm not saying it doesn't impact it. I'm just saying there's always something impacting global shipping prices.
At some point,
like you can keep pointing your finger, and it'll be something else every single time. I don't want to hear it anymore.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
Just.
And I think companies, if backers are saying, man, I'm not seeing the value in this game, that should be a red flag for the designer and the publisher to say, okay, we're having a hard time showing the value at this price point. How can we make it better? Either by better gameplay or better components, or reducing components to reduce the cost.
Smarter. Stuff like Interested Odyssey or even Oathsworn, stuff like that got really hurt because they funded before it did this, right? But anybody launching now, like Elden Ring and stuff like that, if you're not charging an arm and a leg, you're screwing yourself because of these increased prices.
Yep.
The types of games, like I look at like Massive Darkness 2,
right?
Where it's like a giant game with 8 million expansions, right? It's like this whole thing.
1 million boxes.
Exactly, 1 million boxes, massive thing. Don't make that. Separate that into multiple campaigns.
And this is a little behind the scenes for as a creator. I get a lot of indie companies or new companies reaching out with their prototype. We want you to take a look at it, and they're showing miniatures, and I'm like, does this need to be a miniature? Because this will kill your company. Because it's going to be a higher cost, and I'm not sure you're going to get the return for it, you know? And I think that's just like you're talking about, reducing the overall overhead of some of these games.
Well, some of it's just a design perspective. Like, okay, you've played Zombicide, right? I'm assuming you played Zombicide. I've never actually seen you play Zombicide. Do you even own a Zombicide?
It's in that box down there. That big shipping box.
Oh. Wait, which one did you get?
Undead or Alive.
Okay. All right.
I wonder if people are Undead or Alive. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Now you've ruined You peaked. Anyway.
Everyone with their headphones.
Okay. I'm going to lower that I'm going to forget. So with Zombicide, would it play the same if instead of 72 zombies on the board, there were only 32?
So I will say this. I played Zombicide back in 2012 when it was brand new. And I did not know how to play Zombicide, so I was walking in the rooms and just opening every door, and all of a sudden
spawning every single one.
And we literally died within the first 15 minutes.
Perfect. Yeah. That's great. You're all blue.
Yeah. No, everyone's like, "This is probably not the way we should play." I'm like, "Yeah, but I wanted to go in the room."
That's right.
You know, I'm playing like how I played. I want to go in the room.
Yeah. You would not survive the zombie apocalypse.
No, I really screwed it up. So to answer your question, I'm assuming yes, probably does play fine. Not having 1 million miniatures.
Well, I think it's designed for that many, but you can design a game however you want. You can make the math work however you want, right? I think and that's why I'm partially okay with larger miniatures, because I feel I'd rather have fewer larger miniatures than a whole bunch of little ones, because I feel the space isn't the same. Because each mini has to have all that space be around it, and you want it in the plastic tray and all that, right?
So what about miniatures like Kemet, where they have a bunch of little army guys? You know.
I mean that's okay too. I'm mostly just talking about the size of the game.
Okay.
Yeah. It's kind of mostly it.
Right? I just think a lot
that's that many less trucks. That's that many.
I think companies just have to refocus. Was that me or
Rein
you?
it in. Oh, that was my watch.
No, that was me. No. That was my shipping.
Oh,
so you're on this next one, which I have no idea what he's going to talk about with this one. So I'm very
Are
curious.
you scared?
Yeah, I'm curious.
All right. I have no idea what number this is. What is this? 6?
5?
10, 9, 8, 7, 6. My sixth very well thought out disappointment of 2022 is Chip Theory game swords.
So why are the swords bad?
Okay, so
I wanted one so bad.
So that I actually wasn't going to say necessarily that they were bad, because it's not just that. But okay, when you ask for a game, right?
When I reach out to a publisher,
or they reach out to you, when they
Okay.
send you a game for free,
yeah,
what is the purpose of that? Whether you do it or not, what's the purpose
for
of giving you
for
a game?
coverage of the game,
For coverage of the game.
to show my audience the game.
That's probably the main reason. There's others, make you like the company maybe a little bit, maybe establish a network, right? I mean, I'm not saying networking doesn't count. I'm not saying, like, there are other ports there. But there is an excuse, because to review the game, you have to play it.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. And it doesn't financially make sense for them to then pay you to ship it back.
Yeah.
They would start losing money very quickly that way.
Talking about the retail game, if it's a retail.
Either one, I guess.
Prototypes I've had shipped away.
Yeah. Which is fine, because they might find that financially viable,
Fine,
right?
yeah.
But if they don't, I still think that's okay.
Yeah.
Like, either way, all right? Because I've shipped some off too. So that is the reason for that. What is the reason for the sword?
You know, I don't know. Make me jealous.
But do you know what I'm saying? Like we are in a space where we are trying to critique something, and we're often getting stuff for free.
So it's a viral marketing technique.
Of course it is.
You know,
they're not just trying to poop money out.
Kind of. I think they call it a guerrilla marketing, where they're
I like it. That sounds cool.
try something that's.
I'm thinking like in Vietnam now.
Yeah,
That's
trying
sweet.
something different that's not very common, that's going to get views and eyes on your product. But it does make a bias of the people you send it to.
Of course it does.
Because they are getting something unique. But you can say the same thing about your offer for Flying in London, you know, for Elden Ring.
Yeah, but except that they wanted coverage, but probably, and I don't know, I could ask maybe.
Yeah.
I'm assuming they weren't able to send out a copy. So the only way they're
yeah.
going to do it is to get people there. And if I say I can't, then they have to figure out, is it financially viable for us to get King of Average's review out by getting him here?
Okay.
Right. It's
Yeah.
no different than a game. And like my prototype of Anasteer, Mythic Games said that cost.
Well,
them
there's a
about
value to
$1,000.
the flight and to the experience.
Of course.
And that's part of the sword, is that experience, in that it's unique.
Oh yeah,
Right.
100%. And that's why I said I excuse it for that.
Yeah.
Whereas if that's not the case, right? If the IP isn't holding them
Yeah.
back, then I'm very against it,
So
because you're right.
do you
It's
think-
for a specific person.
Do you think this made too much biases?
Honestly, I don't think anybody that is not already just BSing is going to be smitten by a sword.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't think that's the case. But it does work. That's why marketings do it. That's why marketers do it. Like they are not trying to waste their money doing that.
I will say it is very hard as a creator. I try my best to be as impartial as I can in any review. And I tell people when I don't care for a product that they've sent me, I'll be like, hey, I don't really know if you want me to cover this, because I don't care for it. But it is very difficult when a company does send you product, especially a big thing like that, to not want to just be overly excited about the product. You know, I haven't received anything of that kind of monetary value, right? I think the highest I've got was maybe
a custom engraved sword.
A custom engraved sword like that. But I could say, like, I've had times where they've sent me like a $200 game. You're like, man, this is pretty sweet. Like, that's a investment. But I've never reviewed those games.
$200 for you. It didn't cost them $200, right?
No, it
And their
didn't.
manufacturing
No.
costs as
I actually I'll talk about that later with you off screen.
Sure.
But, they sent me a $200 game that cost backers. I've never
Yeah.
reviewed those games. I've just unboxed them or showed them off.
Sure.
Because I do fear that, like, I want to make sure that am I going to be fully impartial in that
Sure.
kind of
No,
review.
I mean, it inherently, you now have a memory and feeling attached to that company that you didn't before.
Yeah.
Just inherently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So getting a frickin' Damascus, hopefully it's real Damascus sword, would be very hard to not
Oh yeah,
be
yeah.
critical.
And that's human nature. That's how we work. It's how we're wired. Like I'm not even dissing. Like, and I'm not saying I wouldn't have turned it away either. Like, no, I don't want that. Actually, I may have done a Patreon giveaway. It's probably what I would have done. But it was just unfortunate to see that was the first time I'd seen a company do that.
Yeah.
That I'd seen
Again, and
overtly do that.
I'm okay with companies stepping beyond the bounds of what's normal in our space and saying, what can we do to be a little bit different? I like guerrilla marketing. I like the flying people around. I even like the swords because it made me go, whoa, that's cool as shit, right, when I saw the video.
Sure.
Yeah, but I was always like, man, how come I didn't get one? Like, what do I got to do in the cool club?
This makes it worse, right? So the last point I want to make on this, and it directly ties to what you just said, right?
Yeah.
Is in a tweeted response, because they did make a comment on it, right?
Yeah.
To the Dice Tower unboxing theirs.
Yeah.
They said that they sent it out because reviewing board games is often a thankless job that you don't get paid a lot for.
Yeah, so let's pay
in
people
response to
money.
the Dice Tower.
Yeah.
I don't know if they unboxed it on their cruise ship or not, but I guess what I'm saying is I doubt Dice Tower wants to even insinuate that they're not paying or thanking their employees.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's funny that, like, you're right, you didn't get one, but Dice Tower did. In other words, I guess if you're gonna do it, at least own up to it. Like, don't BS and try to say you're doing some altruistic thing where you're giving. I bet there is.
I'll be a devil's advocate there. I mean, it is a thankless job. I see so many.
You didn't get no sword.
I didn't get one. No,
I'm not saying it's not. I'm saying they weren't sending it to help people who they felt aren't being thanked
underutilized,
underpaid, and undervalued people.
Mark that would actually
like nobody like. Why
that
would
would actually be
that?
really cool if they had sent it to people who have covered their games, but have lower views or lower subscribers. That to me would be like, hey, you have taken the time to show our game. Show it off. Like, did Lonely Man BG get one? And you probably don't know who that is, but he makes incredible. He makes incredible cinematographic playthrough and instruction videos, and he's covered, I think, almost all Chip Theory because he did Cloud Spire, he did Too Many Bones.
So he's done a lot of stuff for.
He's done. So that's what I'm saying. If you've covered our game, thank you, and we know you don't get enough representation. Sure. So here's the sword.
Because at least, because like I said, I'm looking at why did you send it, and that would lead me to think, oh, you sent it because you honestly are just thankful or whatever you're trying to do that. And while it still may have been misplaced, at least that was your thought.
Chip Theory has a bad. I don't want to say anything. I'm not going to say nothing. I don't want to get myself.
It's on my channel. You're fine.
Well, I'm just going to say that Chip. Yeah,
you guys are.
I'm
cool.
the voice. I do. Chip Theory is.
What do you want to say? I'll say it.
I'm honestly contemplating if I should say it. Is that bad? So I'm going to say it because it's true.
Don't if you don't want to.
Well,
we can move on.
I think Chip Theory.
We can turn the camera off, and you guys can wonder what he said about Chip Theory.
Shut up. Let me say it before I'll regret myself, and you can tell me if that's true or not.
Well, now they're going to think if you don't say it, they're going to think something really bad.
It's not bad. It's just in terms of the space that we're in. Chip Theory is very much selective in who they send product to, so it's almost like a cool kids group. You have to be part of the niche or the part of the clique.
I think a lot of companies are kind of like
that. And they're very much if they don't know you and you're not with them, you're not in the list.
Yeah. Well, I kind of mentioned networking earlier, right? That's one of the reasons I went to Gen Con. Meet people, but also actually like meet some of the people I've talked to. Yeah. But just I guess be out there, right? Yeah. Because if you're not. Yeah, nobody knows who you are. They don't care.
I want to keep this one short because our video, I feel like we're going to be so long. The next one I have is lack of polish in board gaming.
This is part 4 of a 5-part series.
Welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the Game Brigade and King of Average podcast, where today we're going to be discussing the lack of polish in Kickstarters.
In these videos.
So I made a comment when I played a game recently. Funny enough, a game where I don't really care for the company of the game, but the game was fun. Which was Wonderland's War.
Okay.
Played Wonderland's War.
I was wondering why you're like, why don't you like the company? But now I understand. Go ahead.
Did not, I don't want to get too much into the details, but I don't really care for the company very much.
I thought I got you.
Don't, but the game, I didn't even back the game, but I played the game. One of the friends backed it, and I really had a good time. And I thought that was interesting that I made myself comment, wow, I really enjoyed myself. And it made me realize how many games I back and get that are just okay. They're not refined, they're not polished. And you kind of forget that when you play a retail game, they're almost always really solidly good games. So I have a lack of polish in mostly my Kickstarter games, which just seem to come out half-baked or less time. They needed more time refining the game or editing the game cleaning the rule book. For example, Stars of Icarus is a game that is right off the top of my head I can think of, which just had problems. That just was like it could have been a really great game. I talked about this in my review too. Could have been a really great game, but because of some of the polish within the system, failed to meet expectations. And I sit there and I paid over $200 for it. You know, so that's one of my problems. One of my biggest disappointments is the continued lack of polish in these games where we're paying more than we are with retail games.
Yeah,
on average.
I think a lot of it has to do with the scope.
They're too big. Yeah. I do agree with that. They're too big.
It's hard to focus, right?
Yeah, they've got too much stuff.
That's why I don't like if I play another Zombicide, I'll buy it retail. Because you know what the stretch goal characters do? They ruin the game. All balance is gone.
Yeah, they're more fun. They're more fun to play with.
No, they are. Well, that's why I don't buy them retail either. Because they put all the interesting ones there too. But I'm serious because they're not going to play test exhaustively 72 different heroes. This is not going to happen.
But I'm not even just talking about the playtesting of the mechanics. I'm talking about like writing or a direction.
Well,
like
same
just
thing. If you have 600,000
stuff.
words,
yes,
are all of those going to be poetic? No.
Yeah. There was an example of the audio app for Stars of Icarus where you can have the app read the story to you, very much like Oathsworn.
Sure.
And I don't want to harp the girl who
Don't
did
say
the
very
audio.
much like Oathsworn because Oathsworn had freaking like James
professional-
Cosmo.
yeah, it was awesome.
That was like amazing.
But there's a chapter where the girl in the video and the audio starts like rambling and talking to herself, and we're all like kind of confused. And then she says, "Fix it," and then starts talking again. And I'm like, "Oh, she's reading again." And then she screws up, says, "Fix it," and then she would go, "Fix it, fix it," and she kept saying this. And obviously these are meant to be edit and cuts. Yeah. And I'm like, this is only like the 4th mission, guys.
How'd you not go in that far? This was their foreteller, was it? This is their own thing?
I think it's their own app.
Okay, but that's foreteller. I would be surprised. Foreteller
it's their own app.
Typically does a good job.
And I'm like, God, I feel bad for the girl because she's trying. She's doing a good job. But whoever edited this did not edit. And I felt real bad.
Oh,
real
man.
Embarrassing. So we had a little joke when because then you read the section and then I read the section, a section.
Sure.
So then I would stop and say, fix it. You know, it became an inside joke while we played that game.
See, it enhanced your enjoyment.
It did. It's a memory.
It's a memory.
So that's one of mine.
That's
yours?
funny. I dig that.
Number 5.
This one, number 5.
I'm losing my vision. I can't even read your screen anymore.
So this one, you know.
Yeah, I played this with you.
So Tebaru, and this specifically, the AI potential is not realized. So we played the Bad Karmas.
Yep.
Or sorry, like the Curse of the Zodiac, or Bad Karmas, the Curse of the Zodiac.
Was there more to that name?
I feel like there's like 8 semicolons in there. I don't know.
Bad Karma.
This is a bad karma. Yes. So it was a boss battler, right?
Yep.
And one of the things, okay, so you play video games.
Yep.
I play video games.
Yep.
The AI in video games
is good.
Is legit.
It's real.
Like they'll flank you. They'll use teamwork. They'll
depends on the
adapt
game,
to what
but
you do. It
mostly,
does. Yeah. But by and large, especially by now, right? I mean, PS2 games were kind of iffy, right, back in the day. But by and large now, like an Elden Ring boss fight, for instance, right? It'll do stuff depending on if you're dodging or where you're at, and just a super dynamic, super interactive experience fighting that. And I like boss battlers in board games. But I think it's hilarious that our version of an AI, we get tickled if it reacts to us hitting it.
Yeah.
Like, that is where board games are at with boss battlers, right? Where it's like, oh my gosh, I hurt its tail, and now it does less damage on a tail wipe.
Yeah.
Mind blown. It's such, like, preschool babies first boss battle compared to, like, a video game. So you get something like Tebaru. Right,
so
app-driven.
Tebaru. So just in case people didn't know,
you should.
It's a board that you place that's AI, and you have minis, and as you move it around,
it knows
the board,
exactly where you're at.
It also references to an app, and so this one was specifically a boss battler, which had terrain, a boss in the middle, and we had our minis moving around, and it had a light system that showed where you were hitting. It did not work very well.
Yeah, it was a prototype. I'm able to forgive a little bit of that if I could see the potential starting to be used, but I didn't feel that way. I didn't feel like the boss was like playing a video game boss.
It was very boring.
Yeah,
it honestly felt like playing a board game boss battler, but with me doing more work
with
here.
More stuff,
but it also, the problem I have with these AI or these kind of these systems that are trying to implement more technology is that at what point am I playing a game on my phone?
Sure.
Because if that's what it felt like I was playing a phone-based game.
Yes.
Where I was playing here, and then every once in a
Because all
while,
your cards are on there and everything.
Yeah.
Like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then every once in a while we'd have to move stuff around.
Which
It was
I'm
very
not
weird.
even like. So I've been playing like Marvel Snap. Have you played Marvel Snap?
Everyone's talking about this.
It's fun.
No,
It's fun. It's
I'm not
fun.
buying it.
Okay, which is fine. But either way, if they need to like, you just talked about like games, like they could fix that audio tomorrow.
Yes,
Right.
they
Whereas
could.
if it was shipped, they couldn't.
Correct.
Right. Like we joke about Mythic Games doing the errata. So I understand even the potential of having digital cards where you could update it and optimize it and do all that. I get it. There are pros and cons to that, but definitely there are some pros.
Yep.
But there needs to be the benefit, right?
Yeah.
So if you got this amazing boss battler that you hadn't experienced in board games that was super dynamic, I think you'd be a bit more forgiving of dinking around on your phone a little bit. But that's not what we got.
The problem is you'd have to have a developing. It's like you have to have a developer that can make an engaging technology side, but then you also need that person has to have a board game
to know what's fun for a board game. Yeah. You have to marry the two, and I don't pretend to even have the answer to that.
Yeah,
I don't think Tebaru was it.
And I'll tell you guys right now, a lot of times I avoid games that mention they have an app because a lot of times these board game developers don't really have the technology or the tools to make the app.
Sure. Well, it's a totally different. I mean, creativity isn't just universal.
Yeah.
Yes, it is expensive. Software engineers are expensive. But just in general, what makes a good video game is different than what makes a good board game.
Yep.
And so marrying the two is to put it lightly, hard. So yeah, that was a disappointment for me. I was hoping to really be wowed, and I was not.
Yeah, we kind of left that one kind of middling. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The next one I want to talk about, we kind of talked about this a little bit, so we can just mention on this. But this one bothered me a lot because it was one of my most anticipated games for 2020. Still haven't arrived. And that is Monumental from Funforged. And the fact that they ran out of money with 2 Kickstarters. And this is a game that they were kind of letting us along, feeling like the game was produced and ready to go and just needed to ship. And then it turns out it sounds like, oh no, we're not produced. And I don't even know where we're at now in that line.
Spit and plates, man.
And we're just trying to figure it out. And I've had companies do that where they lie to you. I bought a Kickstarter board game table once where they showed actual pictures. Here are your tables in our warehouse. And then, oh no, that was a fake picture.
Jeez.
And so it's like, be honest with your people.
Yeah.
So luckily Funforged has come up with solutions, which a lot of people weren't very happy with, but they partnered with
stuff.
Yeah, they partnered with Asmodee to sell some of their products through Asmodee's retail line, because they were like, we effed up, we lost all the money, and it was not just for Monumental, it was for the previous campaign that did as well. Yeah, and they said that game was first, so all of our money is going to go to funding that game and to get it shipped. Then it's going to go to Monumental. So it sucks for Monumental backers, but at least we are going to get you the game, and they do say they're going to get us. But it was a big disappointment for me because that game has been one of the games that I've been like wanting. I want a Civilization game. And what's funny is Mosaic comes out 2021, and then I own it in 2022. Still waiting on the Monumental.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like I have not only like backed but then received games in between.
Yeah,
right?
in between and back the next one for Mosaic.
Yeah. Did you see my video on them? That I just recently did Funforge.
No.
Okay, so one of the issues I had with that, at least they have a path forward for money, right? So that's good. But their last update was, we're not talking to you guys anymore.
Yeah, so I just reread that update actually not long ago.
Yeah, that's some great ABS.
We're like, hey, so we do have a plan. We're working through it.
We have a plan.
We're not going to be delivering your games until hopefully summer 23.
Maybe, yeah.
And this will be the last time we're updating you.
Yeah.
Unless we have something really key. But we're not doing, they said we're not doing monthly updates. Because I think, and I kind of get it in a way, because their monthly update's going to be like, we have nothing to report. Still making money. Still attempting to make money.
Yeah. No, okay. So this is my point.
That's the idea I think they're doing.
I remember because some companies did that, right? When there was increased shipping costs, right? They had a picture of like a ship and a bar that they had to reach, and they would show how far they are. Yeah. In other words, like, are you halfway there? How much are you making per month?
So we would love to know.
Yeah.
You want to know
you can share all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, just how much did you make last month? How much do you think you're going to make?
They're
this
never
month?
going to show that.
No, they're not going to show anything. They're not going to talk to you.
Yeah. Yeah,
BS.
that was disappointing where they
BS.
said, we're not going to talk.
Your communication needs to go up, not down when there's an issue.
True.
Just,
Yep.
I mean, and there's plenty you could, like, okay, well, how are you doing? Are your sales, is there a big one coming up maybe? Or are you like, oh, well, you know, this is about to ship and then that'll sell at retail. So, you know, we're really
I think
confident.
people are upset because they were talking about potentially selling Monumental at retail the first game.
They kept clarifying that. It's like, we're not doing it, but like our retail people are.
Yeah, and they still said that even in the update.
They did, yeah.
We're not selling Monumental, just the retail references. I'm like, what does that mean?
What does that even mean? Retail
What's
references?
retail reference mean?
I don't know. That's lost in translation. I thought the same. I didn't even touch it because I didn't understand
So
it.
that's
but-
a lot of people freaked out, but I'm like, to be honest, as long as I get my game, that's all I care about.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even really want the expansion. I just want the base game with its expansions.
The problem is, at this point, if it delivered, would it color your view of it?
You know, so there's a lot of games that I've been getting recently.
You have all these negative thoughts
Atlantis
about it already.
Rising is that one of those games where I backed in 2020, and it's like, I don't really even want this game anymore. Like, what the hell am I going to do with it? Storm Thunder is another one. I don't really know because I've got so many campaign games where I'm like, do I want this? That I paid $1,000 for that game. I remember when it hit my credit card, I went, oh my God, what was I doing?
Yeah.
And who am I going to sell that to? Who's got the disposable income?
Chump's gonna buy to just dump that amount on it.
Yeah.
It's hard.
That was a big mistake. And I
sorry.
blame King of Average
sorry.
in his fucking video where he said, I just swore for one of the first times on my channel. It's actually your channel, so it's okay. Where I said,
I'm
where
gonna have to bleep it now. I've never cursed on my channel.
where he said, don't back Wild Ascent, back Storm Center instead.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I'm going to do both.
Okay, well, I didn't tell you to do that.
I still, because
well,
and the problem is Wild Ascent was a game where I mentioned in my review, good game, just has a lot of problems.
No, it's
And I hoped that Levon Rising would fix those problems.
they did with Storm Thunder.
And I'm assuming Levon Rising, well, I only backed the base game, but I'm like, hopefully that fixes it. But most likely, I haven't touched that since I reviewed it. I played it a lot for my review, and it's been sitting up on top of my shelf.
Well, imagine you came. So I joked about how the AI in board games is they react to you hit.
Yeah.
Not on Wild Ascent they don't because the activation's random. There was a big guy. We just kept whacking on him.
Yeah,
and
that's
he did
true,
nothing.
because
He
you
just
draw the
stood there and
card.
took it.
Yeah, that sucks.
Joker was on the bottom of the deck.
So the next one.
Ooh. Do you want to do this one last?
Sure, let's do the next one.
Okay, this was my originally planned. We didn't change anything. Number 4?
Yeah, and this one,
4.
we did a video on this one, which was one of our more popular videos together.
We did. I remember this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
I
watch
mean,
that one.
we've only done 2 videos together, so I'm sure I'll fucking remember. I swear again, it's getting late. And that is industry. What I can't read your thing.
Industry critic bans.
Banning. There was a recent wave of bannings that occurred in our industry of not only yourself but Legion Games, where there was a silencing of voices that were not
and
even.
previously, whole channels have been kind of. I hate to use the word canceled, but definitely there was a push against certain channels. Even,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean,
for sure.
it's happened even outside of like social stuff. Yeah.
And it really was
Or different content
it was a
creators.
sour taste because Legis, and we talked about this in the video, and I think you covered it. He didn't really talk about anything negative. He asked a
He just
simple
asked a question: is this sponsored or whatever?
and
Yeah.
because the person who was getting monetary benefit from their thing got offended that he might be called out for it.
Apparently, a critic asking questions is antagonistic.
Yeah. And so that was a big disappointment because it put, and here's the thing, when you have Facebook groups that are also owned by publishers, there's a lot of bias in that publisher.
Sure.
Because you were banned because you had criticisms of the shipping crisis and a publisher didn't agree with you.
Correct.
Said you were wrong and you are spreading misinformation.
Correct.
And banned you because of that.
Correct.
Nothing you did on their platform.
No.
But because of a video you made and them not liking your video.
Yeah.
Banned
Actually,
you.
the entire even you couldn't even like mention my name. Like
Yeah.
it was like don't even pretend he doesn't exist. Yeah. And that was reversed. And I don't know if Legis ever was though or not. I hope it was.
I
'Cause
think
honestly,
it was because
because
we
as an
had
industry,
so many people.
We can't be banning critics. Their whole purpose is, and I'm not trying to act like we're like some kind of journalistic New York Times people over here. But it is what you got. I mean, like, there is nobody else to do that, right?
Yeah.
So as close as you can get is someone like Liege asking a question.
Yeah.
And I don't say you have to answer it, but you can't go around, like, Banning,
And it's different than if
banning
someone was
critics.
going in there and being an actual troll or being someone disruptive.
Sure. And I've
Completely
made my
different from
statement
that.
on like I think the instant ban as opposed to other forms of moderation is
Yeah.
kind of unfortunate. Yeah. But regardless of whether that's your go-to thing or not, I think you need to really double check before you click the ban next to a critic asking a question.
So we're coming to the end here. This one's going to be super quick. I wrote it down
You've
because
said
we
that
talked
before.
about it in the very beginning. We're going to keep it quick because I don't have much to talk about it just because it was funny, more of a disappointment. We talked about this with the IPs like number 8. And so I put Far Cry IP down.
This was the one you thought of earlier in the video. He didn't
Yeah.
remember because he wrote it down.
Yeah. And
Far Cry.
Yeah, Far Cry.
That killed an entire company.
It did. And it's because and that's FunForged. And so my assumption, this is completely assumption, don't sue me, his beginning of your videos. I honestly wonder if FunForged took some of their money from Monumental and Namji and used that to buy the Far Cry IP with hopes that would 2x or 10x,
They
whatever.
like made new art and stuff too. They didn't even do like a cheap like we're going to use stills from the game or anything.
Yeah,
That was part of the problem with it,
I think they went in, paid for the licensing rights, and it failed to the point they canceled the product. So now they've paid for something that they have no recourse to get money back on.
Often companies even not even taking in the Kickstarter itself, just launching it. Typically they have several $1,000s in marketing and ads and outreach and paying a writer to write posts and come up with stretch goals and all. I mean, like it just launching a Kickstarter costs thousands. I mentioned this when I talked about the Portland Occupation Zone or whatever junk that was on that game found. Not because of the content, but just the whole canceling it the day of launch means that every ad that they paid for is now just wasted, right? Like it just it's not free.
That was interesting.
It's not companies launching stuff.
And
for
that
free.
was also
I'm sure that happened with FunForge.
crowd-based, where the audience canceled them, right? Because they were on GameFound.
GameFound released several complaints.
Yeah.
And then and decided to prevent it from launching the day it was. Which my only comment there was like that cost the company something like of loss.
I think they made that game
ad or
though.
whatever.
Somehow that game still got produced.
I think it had an Indiegogo before that even, and then they just sold it.
I remember seeing it somewhere.
So then it's like, well, what do you even need the crowdfunding for? But that's a whole different subject.
So that was it.
But I
Far
guarantee.
Cry, and again, that is not my number 3 overall. That was one that we thought of. Just in general.
No. We're doing this in order.
Okay,
that was your number 3.
One of the worst experiences of the year was
Before
Far
season.
Cry being canceled. A game that didn't look like the IP.
Yeah, it looked
that had it looked like the most generic game I've ever seen. That was probably, we did not help it, because it was like, you move in, you roll some dice, you have a shotgun, you roll a little bit more dice if they're close.
Heyo.
You know? These are all new mechanics you haven't seen in Zombicide.
I bet it's swords versus shields even. Oh man, yeah.
Yeah, it was there was a lot of going on with that one.
Cool. All right, this one's fun. Board game narratives. And I know we already had a little discussion around this, right? So I mentioned Spec Ops: The Line.
Yep.
And I mentioned before the video started filming about Frosthaven. So let me kind of explain what I mean here. Okay? So
The opinions of King of Average are not my only.
that's fine. That's fine.
Are not my opinions.
Wait. Which one do you like?
I'm distancing myself from
For
your
Frosthaven?
from your video that you
I don't want to be in this anymore. I don't know. Apparently, I'm digging a grave. I think I'm fine in this because I've said this before.
I have no idea what you're gonna say,
Okay.
so
Well, let me say it.
I'm waiting.
Okay.
I'm waiting.
The build up. Okay, so with this one, which is my number 3,
Okay.
we didn't skip one. We reordered. Hold on, I'm gonna drag it and move it. Okay, so I've played a game called Spec Ops: The Line. It was a video game on like the 360 or PS3 or whatever, right? I think PC as well eventually too. It's very much like Apocalypse Now. So if you've seen the movie Apocalypse Now, you very much, I think, know the story of Spec Ops: The Line. But it was a very mature, very challenging game. To the point where you're essentially playing a soldier, U.S. soldier in the desert, shooting people of a different color.
It's like in Iraq.
It's like Dubai, I think, is where they place it. But it's whatever. It's all hypothetical.
Oh, really? Dubai?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and like a rogue Conrad. Okay, so again, Apocalypse Now takes over, and anyway, but you're going through this thing, and it pretty much makes you like try and think you're a hero, and then turns it on its head that you're actually not very much of a hero. Like at one point, it goes through you've been playing Call of Duty, right? So you know every Call of Duty, you have to have the white thermal view where you're in a drone. You get to like nuke all the little white things. They do that. You see a whole bunch of military people and a whole bunch of soldiers, and you like chloroform it pretty much. It's like this like nasty white chemical warfare junk, because you see that and you turn it on them, and then you find out all those white blobs were like women and children trying to escape. And you have to like walk through it and see it, and it's like there's all this stuff where like
did you just ruin the moment? I literally, when we started talking about this,
is a super old game. I can ruin it.
Spoilers, man. Come on now. Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert on a Xbox 360 game.
I own it on my PC. It's on my Steam library. I've never played it.
You should play it. It's great. You get to kill women and children. But not feel good about it. But it even does the same way where during the the loading screens, right? It'll start saying stuff like, "You've killed this many people. Do you feel like a hero yet?" Kind of thing. Yeah. It's taking the Call of Duty thing where you normally are just like shooting people.
It wants you to think.
It makes you think. Yeah.
You know what's a better game that has a really good take on that is Last of Us.
If you say Call of Duty, I swear
Last
to
of
God.
Us 2.
No. There was only one game of The Last of Us. It was number one. They never made two.
Did you play two?
No.
Oh my God, dude! No,
screw that.
It is the best game. In fact, my friend, one of the guys in the game group, just finished it, and I said, I cannot wait till we can talk.
No, that's dumb.
I legit cried.
From frustration of the stupid people.
I want to cry now. Things. I'm getting like tingly feelings remembering the story, and then I went back and watched a YouTuber play the segments of the game I had hard times with, and she was crying, and I'm crying with her. It was a very emotional moment.
Does she know you were crying with her?
No, she was crying. I'll show you later.
That really weird.
I was crying.
Anyway.
Such a good game.
Okay. But kind of like that, right? So the reason I say that
is because it's an emotional story.
Sure.
What is your disappointment?
Board game narratives.
Okay.
I have not had that in a board game. Now, I know that there are some board games that try and get towards that.
We talked about when we were talking about your list.
Yes. So first of all, there's a general tendency of a lot of board games like Frosthaven to move away from anything challenging, like tough subjects. You know, like adults can discuss, like slavery or domestic violence, even stuff like that, right? Like like if I made a board game and said this involves domestic violence and slavery, board games would lose their mind. They're like, oh my gosh, you might not even be able to play that with kids. Yeah. If my 7-year-old can't play it, I don't know why I'd even own the game, right? Yeah. So I think there's some of that, right? That I don't like the leniency of that, but regardless, for me, a narrative, like with board games and stuff, it's not so much, or video games, it's not so much that it's immersive, it's the pacing is just super solid.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like you can get that in board games, because the narrative is typically read a bit of story, play the battle.
Yeah.
Read a little bit of story, play the battle.
It's hard.
Even if the story's like that, it's separated by weeks or even months.
I'm always wondering, how do we introduce that kind of narrative story? I will say, we talked about this, and I was trying to be the devil's advocate a little bit, and I said, King's Dilemma offered some of that aspects. But I didn't. It's interesting because I've had very different stories told to me. Some people said the King's Dilemma, they couldn't play it anymore because of the narrative storylines that came up dealing with slavery or essay stuff.
Sure.
Where they're like, I just can't deal with this. This is not good. And other people are like, I really didn't care because I'm just trying to win the game. Like that was happening, but I'm like, okay, yeah, but I really need to get more
victory points. This is BioWare. I just choose the blue option. What's the blue option?
Yeah. So I need to get my meter up this way.
I'm either all blue or all red.
Yeah. So, so I would say it didn't really impact my emotionals. Like I didn't ever leave King's Dilemma going, man, that was a really interesting story.
Yeah.
Now I will say, Tainted Grail, Fall of Avalon, did have some interesting moments where I was like, that was an interesting choice that I made, which came back and made me feel like a dick later.
Yeah.
Right? Where that was like, okay, I could see that. But I would like to see more of these more mature or willing to be, let's really challenge you to make you feel uncomfortable, to make a to make it more impactful.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to be a little bit of a nerd here.
Yes.
And I apologize.
Yes.
Have you ever seen Babylon 5?
Like episodes. I never watched
Nobody's
the series.
perfect. That's fine. Okay, so So there's an episode in there called Believers.
Okay.
That is all about religion and religious rights.
Yep.
Which is something that, like, I can't fathom a board game touching on that. Because it's such a delicate
rights.
thing,
I mean, yeah.
right? It's literally about a person who's like, it's like an alien and their kid's dying, but they think if their surgery, like, and they're like, hey, we can fix your kid. And then they're like, no, and his soul would leave. Yeah. And the surgeon's like, what are you talking about?
Well, yeah, that's their belief.
And so then the captain says of the ship is like, okay, no, we gotta honor their things. And he's like, no, screw that. So he does surgery on the kid. Yeah. They find out, they're like, oh my gosh, this is demon, and they sacrifice the kid. The kid dies anyway. It's a rough ride, and I know I summarized that real quick, but can you imagine?
Spoilers.
But it was like in 1998.
I mean, even Game of Thrones had really interesting stories like that.
Sure.
And those things, while sometimes hard to deal with or whatever, but they are impactful and memorable. I don't want to spoil people who haven't seen Game of Thrones, but there's a scene where someone gets
it is a little bit more recent. I'll give you that.
Burned at a torch, in the north. And it's a very impactful scene, and it ends up really, I'm not going to say anything more. But those, you don't see that in media, because it was very hard to watch. Mm-hmm. But it was an impactful scene, and it made it more memorable. So maybe there is a space in board gaming where they can say, we have the room. Let's see. But Oathsworn kind of did that, where they're going to be, a
little bit. I mean, even like Arena. So like in Arena, there's, and I think that's what you're saying, there's these moments, right? Yeah. But I don't think it's like really tackling
But do I want to play a game where it's like just miserable?
Well, that's the thing. Yeah. You're right. I feel like it would have to be a solo game, right? It'd have to be like you playing The Last of Us, where you can just sit there, and if you're in a good part, you can just keep playing up until 3 a.m. or whatever, right? Yeah. But it's when it's, and that's why I'm thinking, like, I don't know if board games just can't do it, or we haven't had an author that can touch something as delicate as that with enough skill to properly show it the time of day it needs, or if just board games inherently can't give me that, and I have to go to video games for that, or a book.
That's a good one.
I don't know. Because you're right. It's not you and your buddies with some pizza, like, all right, guys, should we kill the children or not?
That's what I'm just saying, like.
Well, Arena had that. You escape. It's like one of the first missions.
Don't spoilers.
They said it in the Kickstarter. It was their example of the story. So I feel safe doing this. You escape out of the dungeon. You just killed the vampire lord of the dungeon, right? And you burst out, and there's a whole bunch of orc moms and orc kids hanging laundry. Yeah. And you're just like, and you can decide. Kill him or leave and just say, please don't tell anybody.
Gloomhaven does that too. Yeah. Like one of the first maps.
Frosthaven won't.
Gloomhaven, one of the first missions.
I worry.
You go on. You get assigned a mission to clear out a cave of bad dudes. Mm-hmm. You clear out the cave. You kill everyone. You come back. By the way, that was like a family unit you just killed. So that's pretty shit. And you're like. Yeah. Well, I mean,
stuff happens.
The problem with Gloomhaven is they didn't really know how to build up on the impactfulness. So it's like, oh, that was pretty interesting, but then it dropped.
Yeah, but again, I don't feel like that's like finding out something. I just don't think they do it. I just don't think we have had an author mature enough to be able to do it.
Maybe games like Dark Quarter that I had the prototype sitting right there, that might have opportunity to do something like that. But I agree. I haven't seen much games. Or? It's an app driven. It's Lucky Duck.
Do you think it's because it's app driven? It has potential.
No, because they are purposely saying that game it's like mature audience. Like you can see the big M on the bottom left corner.
No, I know, but that just means they'll say the F word like 8 times. And they'll be like, oh, we're adults now. It's like...
I mean, you want to be able to say games should have the right to be able to have challenging topics and not feel threatened that people are going to be I
would be drawn to something like that. Okay. I want to be challenged.
I think that's the core of this conversation. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yep. So my last two... I have that being sold to Americans, and we're being lied to about it.
Wait, you added that? You didn't tell me you were doing it.
I did add it.
There they go again.
And all the Europeans, all the Europeans that watch King of Average, I'm sorry, my guys, but it really stinks that publishers are not being honest about it, and they're wrapping it into the pledge level, VAT, which is a European tax based on the things that Europeans get, what drives me nuts is when people tell us, well, Europeans get all this healthcare or education, but you're paying 20% tax on your goods and services. Like, there's a reason that money has to come from somewhere, and that's what it is. Sure. So then being told Americans who have our own, I have to pay my healthcare and I have to pay all my stuff and pay my sales tax for my state, to have to pay for other people in other countries for their subsidized. And I get it. It's pennies. It's not a lot. And it does allow them to get the game at a cheaper price. But maybe it's just, I want a publisher.
That is not pennies. That's expensive.
But when you spread it across everyone,
then it's only mildly expensive to everybody. For
yeah,
the games
that's
I
what I'm
back
saying.
anyway.
That's what I'm saying. When you're spreading it across.
Yeah.
But the problem is, and you talk about this all the time, and you click the community tab and you'll see a game, and over a third, 2/3, or maybe half of the game is from America, yet you're subsidizing European, which is maybe a third of that backing unit. It's kind of weird. And then
Depending on the game,
and they'll lie to you and say, "Oh, well, we're charging sales tax to U.S. backers."
Not in Idaho.
Well, it is very rare for a company to charge sales taxes. They have to have specific requirements for that to be met.
Yeah, and even then, it's not 20%. It's like
6.
Yeah, it's like 6 here anyway.
But then I'm like, but the thing is, like, what about states who don't have sales tax?
Sure, yeah, there's states that
that's
don't,
the blanket statement. Oh, we're charging Americans as well for the sales tax.
You're leading into exactly what I was going to say with it. The inherent problem with this is not everybody, like you have when it's on Kickstarter, so before the pledge manager, right? You're able to list one price for everybody, right? And that's just inherently a bad system. I think it's inherently something like BackerKit or GameFound could have improved on.
Had the option to fix.
Where if I'm from Spain, I see the price for Spain.
Yeah.
And it might be very different from the one to the US.
And maybe they're like trying to get around people
like
with
video games and everybody else does it, right?
Well, maybe they have like VPNs where people are like, well, I'm going to put myself in the cheapest region to get the cheapest
I
price.
could look at Amazon.uk and see a price of something and it'd be more expensive or less and feel bad about it, I guess. But at the end of the day, people in UK go to Amazon UK and see the Amazon UK prices.
So that has been one of my biggest disappointments. And the thing
is, then you wouldn't even be aware of it.
Is publishers need to be honest with it. Because then you have some publishers like Simon who are very upfront and saying VAT will be charged in the pledge manager based on your country's taxes, and they're upfront about it, and they state it. Other countries don't even touch on it, and then they're like, "We're figuring it out." Like, how have you guys not figured it out? This is a massive thing. And the thing with companies who now subsidize, and they'll say, "Oh, well, we'll cover it ourselves." That's a massive profit loss that they are now hitting on top of their. Now they are not to pay an additional 20%.
The average profit margin on a board game on Kickstarter for the types that I back, at least, so the really big games, expensive ones, typically 30 to 40%.
Yeah, so imagine now taking 20%.
Exactly. That's like all of it. Yeah, you're just not making profit on
so I'm just like,
that's dumb too.
The companies that are saying we're covering it, no, they're subsidizing across the entire platform, which is in line with one of my original points of there's not as much value in Kickstarter now because the prices have gone up across the board because they're subsidizing costs across the board.
I can guarantee you, if I had to pay VAT, I would not be backing any games on Kickstarter.
I think that all the time, but I don't want to say it. But I'm like,
I wouldn't touch that. But if I suddenly saw like a 20% increase in cost,
there's no way.
Nope. Yeah, can't handle it.
So what's your
not
last?
Sustainable.
I have one left.
Okay, well you'll do it after this one. So my number 2 is companies' struggles. This was pretty much all of 2022 wrapped
we've already
up.
Talked about it. So
Pearson. So I have stuff like Pearson Games, Blacklist Games, Mythic Games. People like to put games at the end of their name, like we don't know what they're doing. Yeah, studios. Yeah, Shadowborn Games, Chip Theory Games, Lunar Oak Games. I don't know, Funforge, etc. Right? It was a very disappointing year.
It was a rough year for publishers, where poor communication, poor development, poor ideas just really sunk a lot of ships. And I'm actually want to put a caveat here. I'm actually proud of Mythic to come out and say we screwed up. Yeah. We're selling IPs, making money. We're going to focus on specific products because we got ourselves in over our head.
Yeah. Somebody recently asked why I was being lenient on Mythic Games, but then mean to Funforge.
Yeah.
Right? And I said it was because of... I've always said this. I don't expect perfection, but when you mess up, I expect you to react a certain way.
Yeah.
And so their mess up now, their reactions to it now, obviously to get to this point was a mess up, but now they're selling the IP, they're firing employees, or they're doing all the things that are hard but need to be done.
And this has started
as opposed to not communicating.
When they cut the guy, unfortunately, I can't remember his name. The guy from Dice Tower.
Sam Healy.
Sam Healy, he was the first
He
cut.
replaced Az, who got let
Yeah.
go from...
That was the
UK
first
off,
real cut because he was part of the marketing department, and they obviously said this is not working to get our what we need, and it's
Or he was a rat leaving a sinking ship.
who knows? We don't know how it really worked out.
I mean, he could have seen the writings on the wall and been like,
who
peace out,
knows?
guys.
But yeah, that's the first process of eliminating the positions as they're trying to fix it. Asmodee did the same thing with Fantasy Flight, where Fantasy Flight had to bring in a third-party person to say, our company is having a real issue. What do we do? And they're like, well, we're cutting this. We're canceling that product. A lot of people didn't like it. And they're like, oh, Asmodee is failing. No, they're rebalancing the books and figuring out what works, what doesn't, and where can we put our money.
Companies do that all the time. DC is like Discovery's doing that with like Warner Brothers and DC and stuff like that all over the place. Yeah. I mean, it just sucks that they got in that situation to begin with, right?
This goes back in line too, and I talked about this too, where as consumers we need to be very aware of the company's history and what they're doing. Peterson Games, Blacklist Game, Mythic Games, Shadowborn, they didn't have an issue, or Lunar Oak, but being aware of the history and where they're at with their previous games. Are they funding? Are they delivering? Before you give them more money. You know, I always said I'm not giving Mythic Games a penny until they deliver me a playable game. You know? So...
Well, joke's on you. They said, I'm not delivering you a game until you give us a penny.
True. Still sitting here waiting on games. Well, that's funny is I bought that freaking Joan of Arc game. I bought the 1.5. Still sucks. I'm like, I don't know if I'm ever going to touch this game.
You know, the problem is that not everybody watches your channel or my channel. Like, we are talking to like a niche of a niche of a niche, right? And so there's a ton of people on Kickstarter that aren't going to watch some nerd on YouTube talk about it and warn them, hey, this is probably a bad idea.
But I'm just saying, you know, just in general, be smart. Look at who they're doing. Shadowborn Games, I think you put them on there because they asked for money. Same thing with Lunar Oak.
Well, just I mean, even Chip Theory Games from their
they didn't ask for anything, but they said it's going to be a while.
Well, because they got screwed over in that
manufacturing
thing, right? Where their like discs were wrong or whatever.
So they have rolls of chips.
Yeah, and the purple ones were all the same instead of
something was wrong,
or it was like all haphazard or something. Like
I'm actually glad their QC person opened it up and said, "Whoa, this isn't right."
Less expensive than fixing it after the fact. Yes, but it sucks to see these companies get hit hard like that because that was right before their like retail stuff, right? They lost like a lot of potential.
Oh, they're definitely lost a lot of money.
Yeah.
So my next one I was going to cover, we've already done. So
sweet.
Finalize on yours.
Last one. My coverage of shipping issues.
Okay.
That's one of my biggest disappointments. My number one disappointment is me.
Which is an interesting take, because did you feel like you did something wrong?
Wrong, no.
Okay.
I don't feel like I did things as good as I could have.
Interesting.
And so I feel like I've improved.
Where did you feel like you made the mistake?
Gee, where to begin on that?
Knowing that we have to keep the video watchable in terms of length here. Don't ramble for 40 minutes.
Yeah. Okay, timing. I got 30 minutes here. No, so the thing really with the whole shipping thing was, first of all, it was the first time I think so like one of my issues was I always
Should we talk about the coverage and explain what you did?
No. Okay.
So there's some context.
Well, because I'm going to explain what the issue. Well, some of the issues I did was. I guess the fundamental thing was
you made a video
shipping
regarding
prices increased, and I covered the shipping price increase. I'll leave it as generic as that.
But you also made claims in that video. The prices.
I'm trying to get to that. That's what I'm trying to say.
I'm just trying to help.
Okay.
Trying to build some context here.
So I build my thumbnails after I film.
Yep.
So I have an idea, or I talk to somebody or whatever, and I think of something, I write it down, then I film it at night, and I make the thumbnail afterwards. And I have my video in my head when I make the thumbnail.
Okay.
But everybody watching right now experiences it the complete opposite. They have the thumbnail and nothing else, and then watch the video.
Yep.
Right? So I'll have a video.
It's an interesting take, actually. Yeah, interesting idea.
And it's something I hadn't even thought of, right? Yep. But what had happened was people don't watch your whole video, right? They might only watch half of it. They might only watch a third of it.
Actually,
they may not watch it all.
They
might
watch
only
30
see your
seconds.
thumbnail.
They watch 30 seconds
and then
on average. Yeah.
Or they just see the thumbnail and then just bounce off of that and don't even see it at all, right? So I'm trying to talk through a whole lot of different things. It's a complex thing, and trying not to make it too complex. So I'm purposely like trying to dumb it down, but then, you know, I didn't cover it very well. But then on top of that, my thumbnails made it like it didn't even stand for what I was saying per se. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like,
so people were getting an impression that you were not trying.
That I was claiming that everybody was just screwing everybody over. Essentially,
Yeah.
I was like, all these companies are just out to get you, and they're all liars and all that. But my video, I never said that in my video. But my thumbnail.
I mean, it's been 6 months. I can't remember.
Okay, well, I added the word "some" because I think I said like they're lying to you or whatever.
Yeah.
And to me, they were who I was talking about, right? Like a select few companies that I talked through in the video. But when all you see is they, and then you hear even maybe the first 30 seconds, first minute or something like that. Yep. I've only sold you into the AM shirts by now, right? So then you watch another minute and you hear. So I didn't do very good there. That was one thing.
Yeah.
And I've tried to improve that. Hopefully I have. My number 2 thing was, I guess, just reaching out. So nowadays, there's a difference between covering a shipment delay and saying a company is lying to you about this or that. I guess some critiques are more targeted.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
And when it's targeted, I try to reach out. So like now with Kamon's NFT stuff with Monsoon and all that, first of all, I do a way more research into it instead of just having a hunch. So I had a hunch, and I did all the research, looking into addresses that they're filing and tax returns.
Yeah, which I've noticed in recent videos where you're doing a lot more, here are my receipts.
Exactly, yeah. So showing a lot more of that. And then also, I reached out to Kamon and Monsoon for a comment.
Which they said no comment.
For them, they did none. But I have had responses already. Yeah. And I'm still working on that. Like the last one I had, I don't remember who it was. Anyway, the last person I had a response, and I even had their response, but I didn't like. Was this the gentleman that was
not an owner, but he is an owner?
I don't know what that means.
He was a VP president, but he said, "I have no direction."
Oh yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, yeah. So it was that for like Grimlord Games.
Yeah.
So for Grimlord Games, that's exactly what I did. I reached out a few hours before filming, so it's not like I mean, again, I'm like breakneck.
But that's the problem, because that's what we do in videos. We're like, I want to film a video.
Film it, yeah.
Keep going, yeah.
Well, but I mean that's even what our news media nowadays does, right? They're not immediately available for comment, right? And so it needs to be immediately, right? But he actually did respond. I didn't film because of that.
Yeah.
But I still needed work on do that. But I guess I'm trying. So I guess what I'm saying is my biggest disappointment there was having the industry go through something as heavy as that shipping thing and failing to cover it in the way I feel like consumers needed it covered.
Yeah, and it made yourself more not looking disingenuous, because I felt like you were coming from a way of trying to be helpful.
I'm not trying to not be helpful, that's for sure. Yeah.
But you were also contrarian to everyone else in the content creator space, because they were all being...
Okay, so that's kind of a hard part. It wasn't everybody, because I talked to like literally 6 developers who told me this, right? But I didn't want to put them on the line, because then they're just going to, like, there's a reason they're not speaking out publicly.
Yeah.
You know how many times I have covered something and I get developers or other YouTubers emailing me privately, either on emailing or Discord even, sometimes I get comments from there saying, dude, you are totally right. Like, I say this all the time. But they ain't making a public video about it. I all the time I'll cover something like that. Hey, what are you yelling
Dude,
for?
It's 2 a.m., my guy.
It's 1:30. It's 1:30, please. You were playing Call of Duty to how late yesterday?
Hey, that was double XP weekend.
Wait, that's why you're tired now. That's why you're tired
double
now.
Double XP weekend on shipment.
So anyway, like I get that all the time. And so a lot of times it's like the only voice you hear are the people that are either very adamant about it, or the ones that would bully another viewpoint.
Yeah.
Which I think we kind of saw that too, right? Because the moment I spoke out, that's when the banning started.
That's when you got banned.
And I get I didn't do a great job at it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's not like they were willing to have a conversation either, right?
I appreciated your perspective in that video. I've actually found that one of the reasons I brought this up to talk about this kind of stuff is you have become kind of the journalist. I know you hate it, but that's who you are. You are, that is your niche now, my guy. Your
I'm not
miniatures.
just the guy that has too long of unboxings.
Miniatures are done. You don't cover miniatures. You cover news.
Cover news.
Okay, so let's get that out.
I can cover news and not be a media guy, though, right? That sounds gross.
I didn't say. I said you're just a journalist. You're just a
no,
coverage.
well, I'd rather be media than journalist. Journalists don't play games, don't they?
No, they do.
I tell that to the video
One of
game
my
journalists.
things, when I was in high school, I wanted to be a media journalist. I wanted to be a PC gamer. Very badly.
Mm-hmm. What happened?
I'm an idiot. my degree is in journalism. Turns out.
Is it really?
Yeah. Turns out it is.
I might need to talk to you after this camera's over how to do this right.
You know, I've been
making
making YouTube videos.
I have no idea what I'm doing.
Thinking I'm a content creator since like 2006. Like I've been in this game for a long time.
Yeah, that's true.
So
that's true. You definitely have.
I definitely haven't figured out what the hell I'm doing.
Yeah, well, same. So anyway, yeah, that's my biggest disappointment was mostly the shipping thing, but really just in general, me often people tell me what I am, and I'm like, no, for about 2 years until I mull it over enough to be okay with it.
I think you've
and people have been telling me this for a while.
You found a space. You have presented arguments and a narrative. You tell the story very well, which I enjoy. So I feel like that's what I'm saying. Like you'll present the problem and say, okay, let's backtrack and figure out what happened here, and let's show you what's going on. I appreciate that because it's very interesting. It keeps you watching. And
I'm liking this. Keep going. Keep going.
Yeah,
Keep going.
And so here, I'll pet you a little bit.
Don't make it weird. Don't make it weird.
Give you your loves. So yeah, I'm just saying, like, and that's the thing is one of the hardest things in our space is finding your voice and finding your niche. And that's the thing that I can't find another person that talks about industry space as well as you do, where you talk about things in a professional manner. So
see, I see the same thing about Liege. I think he has a really good voice sometimes.
Does good, but he doesn't.
He also got banned.
He doesn't.
Funny that.
Not like I'm talking smack on Liege because I like Chris a lot, but he doesn't do the backup like you do, where he talks about things as he researches it, but he just is talking. He's talking, you know. But you're like, let me show you the receipts now because you were effectively canceled. Yeah. You know, you were effectively canceled, so you're like, shit. Well, now I need to back up and show you where I'm getting my information. So people, if they have questions, they can look it up themselves or do whatever. And that is a true way, you know, you present your arguments.
Yeah.
So.
And I think, like, I don't know. It's also just, like, the industry needs to get used to it, too, right? Like, the industry is not used to being critiqued.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah,
So, we're going to wrap this up. I hope you guys enjoyed watching our little short... collab here.
Yeah.
I have been trying to get King to hang out with me and make videos and play games with me. So if you guys want to see that, please subscribe to King of Average channel, which is this video's on.
So I'm having a fundraiser. If you want me to game with I have a new $20 tier down.
like this video, do all the things, show us that you guys appreciate this.
Yeah, we can do this more often.
Yeah.
For sure. That's definitely a thing. Just I guess let us know.
Yeah, because I'm always curious what people think of these videos and how far they get along. And I've had some people like, I just put it on at work and listen to you guys talk for 2 hours. So I'm very curious to see what people think of this long form video again.
Yeah.
As we wrap it up. And I am very serious about it. I'm trying to get King to come out and play board games with me so he can actually play games rather than just talk about the news.
I might have some time coming up here soon. Oh, and his channel's linked below. You should check it out if you want like actual like board games covered instead of just like industry news.
I love how we're like digging each other.
If you want to learn about actual board games, this guy actually covers those.
I didn't even need a video in 7 days. I'm really bad.
Well, don't say that.
Shh, guys,
it's
Christmas. I'm just, whatever. All right, bye.
See you guys.